Welcome back. Charles Tarbey from Century 21 now joins us with all the latest numbers. Charles, good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Did you like the house
Stuart?
we picked out for you? We thought it would be a fair amount of space in the city.
I actually did see that advertised or coming up with Craig Ponty before, but it's too holy for me. There's all these bishops and priests and whatever, and last time I did confession was back at boarding school, so it's probably just a bit too holy for me to live in.
I hadn't thought about that downside.
Yeah, that's
of the property.
that's the other side.
You've been confessing for a while, you
That's the other side.
Now, auction clearance rates. It must have been an interesting week for the auctions because obviously numbers would have been down.
Look, Chris, the numbers we knew would be down, but we don't think it changes the percentages if there's still interest there. And we probably had the best week we've had in a long time. So the overall average was a 74.7%. Clearance nationally, when you look at, 74.9 actually nationally, but Melbourne was 74.7. Now that's really good for Melbourne, but there was a star performer, and it was Sydney, 85.1% clearance rate.
But is that because people would be thinking, I'm only going to put it on the market if I'm really confident? So is it all the confident people there last weekend?
No, I think it's a percentage game. It's not a numbers game, because Adelaide, where there are not a lot of auctions go or put up properties are put up to auction, that actually hit 76.1%. Now Adelaide's been up there for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I've been mentioning it then, but 76% in Adelaide. So it's not about the volume, it really is about the percentage, and 85% or 85.1% in Sydney is really fantastic. It does show something's going on.
Now, you're not a fan of booms, and you've said that quite a few times here. You don't like that volatility, but are we getting into that, do you reckon?
There are some suburbs that are booming, and that's the problem. There are some suburbs that could potentially have a bubble because people are just getting too excited and paying just a little bit too much. And you're seeing these reports every week. X over a reserve, and it's dangerous. It really is dangerous.
Yeah. Now, homes advertised, that's got to be the big thing.
Finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks of negative advice to you, this week we had a plus 1.16%
it does look
increase.
small
You can just see it. It's just barely there, but it's a great sign, and we thought that's what might happen. So the next couple of weeks are going to be really interesting to see.
Now, I know you've recently been in New Zealand. I'm actually there next week. What's the market like over there?
Well, that's a good marketplace to watch because since the 1st of July to today, the listing numbers with those guys, they actually were a negative 3.7%. So there's a negative amount of listings that actually are on the market. But here's the interesting part. In the same period of time, they've had a 29% increase in the number of listings coming on, meaning that a lot of sales are occurring in New Zealand. That marketplace is 8.3% higher in price now than it was at its peak in 2007. So they're really moving along.
So they kind of advanced.
Look, mostly Auckland and Canterbury districts are the ones that are really driving it there, but it is very, very different compared to what we're seeing here at the moment. So we could be heading in that direction.
Sounds well. I've been waiting for a long time. Rent price.
The rent prices, Sydney's are still moving along, 12.41%. Melbourne's just nudged up from last week to 7.33%. But Perth, it's still at that 17.87%. But that's been sitting in that range for a while now, so it's actually dropped from this time last week. But overall across the country, it's a 12.54% increase since January last year, which is where I've been keeping the charts from.
And then what about vacancy as a final?
Sydney and Melbourne are doing okay, 3.32% for Sydney and 2.37% for Melbourne. But Perth, 3.99%, almost nudging the 4%, keeping the average at 3.23% across the country. But we really need to keep a close eye on Perth because that's been sitting up in that high range for a while.
Now, the last year we've been talking about interest rates. The last God knows how many months we've been talking about the election. There's nothing to talk about now, is there? Does that mean people are going to enter the market, or is there going to be something new coming along?
There seems to be a level of excitement in the marketplace. I think probably what we're going to be talking about nowadays are the people who are actually the volumes. That's what we're going to be talking about, volumes. I think we had a 30% increase in sales volumes over this time last year. So that's the first volume indicator that's come out, and I think that's where we're heading.
Are you getting like false auctions on the phone these days with Dutch auctions? People put $20,000, but it doesn't really matter at the moment?
It doesn't seem to matter, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to matter at all. So it's a great place, but we've just got to be careful it just doesn't go crazy. Let's get some listings on the books and it'll balance it out a bit more, and then everybody should be pretty happy about growth.
I mean, certainly my guys, we're always trying to buy before it comes on the market rather than go to auction, but
I know.
a lot of the agents are not...
You're just not going to get there nowadays.
Yeah.
And our very good friends at RP Data are very much losing the bet and trying to find ways of manipulating the figures so they lose.
Charles Tarbey, Stuart Wall, good to see you guys. See you next week.
Cheers,
and thanks for joining us at home. We'll see you again next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.